Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button for 2022. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro. With me is this Hebel Superman.
Oh, hey, buddy.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing well. It's been a wonderful time of the year, and we're leading into an even better time of the year.
Yes.
And I'm so excited for whatever happens next month, despite the bloodbath that we're expecting.
Yeah, we're expecting a massive bloodbath when it comes to game releases. But now we moved on from Game of the Year from last week, which was a really fun time that I kind of gave you a swerve of what my favorite game of that year was, which you have found some enjoyment of. Now we are moving to what's the most exciting things that awaits us for this hopefully not terrible year, considering the times we live in. Screw you, Omicron. So, Paul, 2022, it's surprisingly stacked because a lot of games that were supposed to come out in 2021 got pushed, on top of the games that were always scheduled to be 2022 releases. So, for the people that complained 2021 was a weak year, that there was nothing that came out, obviously anyone's entitled to their opinion. I would say they were wrong because...
And if it's wrong...
Yes. I would say 2021 ended up being more interesting because of that. Because, especially if you were willing, like I mentioned last week, to kind of look to the sides and dig into what was there and find the variety. 2022 is looking like it's going to be one of those banger, like, early console generation defining years. Think about 2007, back in the 360 and PS3 era. 2007 was when we got Assassin's Creed, Bioshock of the first Mass Effect, the first Uncharted, like very high, Halo 3, very highly memorable. Then 2015 we got games like Witcher 3, Fallout 4, Metal Gear Solid 5, Bloodborne, Arkham Knight, Rise of the Tomb Raider. 2015 was like that first year for the consoles finally justified themselves.
Yeah. Instead
of just kind of being in this like weird cross-gen transitional period. That's what 2021 was in a way. Similar to 2014. Now we're going to be, as long as COVID doesn't screw anything up again, like it's been doing for the past 2 years with delays. Like we recently got news that Stalker 2 got pushed from April all the way to December this year. So, man, hopefully none of these are going to be heavily delayed.
If any of them really do get delayed, I don't think it's going to be out of this year, with the exception of one or two that we'll kind of chat about. But a lot of these have been in the pipeline for so many years that, I mean, I don't think it would be any possibility, especially with companies now getting used to the new flow of people working from home.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be many more crazy delays.
Yeah, I feel like most companies have now finally shifted now to kind of like in 2020 when they switched to work from home. That was like a massive shock in the system. People were not used to it. People were not they got so used to the camaraderie of working with their partners like in the office that switching to like that remote working kind of screwed their flow. But most companies have actually, there's been many news saying that it has helped them now like increase their workflow by hiring more people, switching their infrastructure. So
for some people wanting to work are no longer limited by geography. You can have somebody working from home in El Salvador working for a company based in New York, and there's no problems.
Exactly. So there's been a net benefit to it, but at the same time, there's always like different distances is always gonna mess up no matter what. So there's always the highly likelihood that dev time is always going to be in flux and something wrong can happen because of the widely spread out nature of development now. But it's gotten better. But at the same time, we always have to kind of have that tinge in that. Let's keep in mind these developers are like still not working in a traditional environment, so let's not get too mad if some of these games get pushed. But if we get any, which based on how many are scheduled for this year, we're likely getting
a third of what we're getting, I will be happy.
Exactly. So there's so many games, Paul, that I had to like make a list of honorable mentions apart from a top 10. Kind of similar how we did Game of the Year. So similar to how we did that, if we have a game that overlaps, we're going to talk immediately then, whether it's in an honorable mention or if it's in top 10, without mentioning where. If it's in the top 10, if we talk it early.
Okay, so we won't reveal that.
Exactly. Just reveal it when it's your turn. Yeah. But we can have the conversation now. Like my first honorable mention, the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
That's only in your honorable mentions.
Yes.
What is wrong with you, Alejandro?
I have my.
Don't you have class?
I have my excuses. So.
All right. Yeah, let's hear it.
For one, other than Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild is not my favorite Zelda. Like, it's just right there. I prefer the other one. So, obviously, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2017, this 2017 game, highly beloved by many. IGN just crowned it the best game of all time, something I highly disagree with. At the same time, Breath of the Wild is probably still, other than Metroid Dread, my favorite game on the Switch. Which is funny because the Switch is now 5 years old, and it's crazy that no other game, in my opinion, has like surpassed it. It's in my honorable mentions because, for one, we don't even have a freaking title. It's still being referred as the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. They're not even calling it Breath of the Wild 2. So
right, that's what the fandom has done, which, fair enough.
Because it's like, it's easier to call it Breath of the Wild 2 instead of the sequel to Breath of the Wild. That's just a mouthful. But I'm calling it how it's titled if you look it up in YouTube. I feel like this has the potential to be the Majora's Mask to Breath of the Wild, kind of like taking
so very divisive and polarizing.
Yeah, but also evolving the formula in interesting ways.
Yeah, good point.
So I feel like, especially because based on the footage we've seen with this game, it seems like it's reusing a lot of the assets while bolting like some sky sections on top of it. So I feel like if one thing defined Breath of the Wild was this like very malleable open nature, how dynamic its open world was, that's the one thing that I always say that Breath of the Wild always shined, not as a Zelda game, but as a fantastic open world sandbox where its physics engine allowed for so much variety and interactions, and it's what made that game highly replayable, and you see like the speedrunning community break it in some interesting ways.
I mean, it's the same both almost backhanded compliment that you can offer to something like Black Flag being a terrible Assassin's Creed game but a great pirate game, and something like DMC Devil May Cry not being a good Devil May Cry game but being an amazing hack and slash action game. This is the same situation where it might not be the best Zelda, but it is a great lesson in not just open world design but in environmental and atmospheric storytelling, just like world building.
Just think how many games now are finally like taking those inspirations. You started playing the Pathless recently.
Just today,
I had been playing that. We're not doing what we've been playing right now to just focus on this, but we're starting to see that Breath of the Wild inspiration of the world you kind of more explore on your own, because the game doesn't handhold you and it's like more diegetic in its design. I feel like that's Breath of the Wild's greatest achievement. My hope would be that this sequel takes all their achievements and start bringing in more Zelda stuff for it to be even more complete. I feel that's like the proper next step for Breath of the Wild. And it's in my honorable mentions because even though they say 2022, considering we don't even have a freaking title yet, I feel this is one of those games that could slip.
This is like the only game on my list that I think has a very good chance of not making it this year, despite the fact that I really wanted to, and they've said it's been in the pipeline since what, like 2018? No, 19, where they just said the cinematic trailer and that it is being worked on, right? That was all they said, and then it was 2021 that they showed the gameplay. "Quote unquote," big
we
time
did
on
see
that.
We did see like what looks like gameplay, especially since we know
gameplay.
We know how that game looks.
We didn't even see what Link's face looks like technically,
because there's theories that
it's not Link.
See it's not a Link. So interesting stuff there.
That had me curious. I was like, ooh, okay, intrigue. But I mean, that's the same kind of stuff that we got in was it, I guess, technically 2016 when the trailer came out for Breath of the Wild?
The original, yes. That gave it a title.
Right, which that I told you briefly over text. That was an experience like no other, because I was not interested in the next Zelda at all. I was kind of dead after Skyward Sword, and I wasn't going to get a Switch. And the first half of that trailer was whatever, and then like the music ramped up and they showed all the crazy crap that went on in that game, and I remember not being more hyped about anything in my life at that point. Oh my gosh.
Because to be fair, like my misgivings towards that game aside, like Zelda needed a change after Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword was the moment where everyone was like, I think this formula has been stretched enough, and we confirmed it by playing the Switch re-release of Skyward Sword, that despite them trying to improve it, it's like it's still a black spot of, yeah, there's a reason why the series had to change. So, and people loved it. That's the thing. Yeah. I'm maybe minority opinion myself saying that it's not my favorite, but for many people it is. So.
Well, it's fully valid. Like, as somebody who champions that game, and I think the longer I've gone away from it, I think it's coming back up in my fondness for it, because the absence of it is definitely making me like, oh, I should go replay Breath of the Wild. Yeah, that was a nice experience. And it's like, it's an experience that I can still get that feeling when I replay it, not like most games that I replay nowadays.
I would say my fondness for it grew after playing Pray for the Gods.
Ooh, I'm sure after that you're like, this could have been Breath of the Wild. And I haven't even bothered to look at gameplay, much less consider buying it. But if there's anything that you told me, I'm glad that I didn't. After your initial, like, go buy this, it's worth $30. I was like, I don't know.
If there's one thing that Pray for the Gods like made it interesting, is that it at least gives me an idea of what Breath of the Wild with a grappling hook could look like. Other than that, does everything else right, especially since Zelda always had. Yeah. Especially since Zelda had the grappling hook before.
It did. It had the hook shots.
Exactly.
Like, oh, that would be such a great revolution of that. Like, can you imagine the physics? Like, going really fast, hook shot in a tree or a cliff.
Especially after playing Halo. Especially after Halo.
Oh, that's what got me, like, visibly understanding what this could look like with speed running and stuff. Gosh, it makes me excited. Anyway, one thing that I did want to say just before we moved on from it, I recently watched, I think it was like an hour-long video from one of my favorite YouTube channels called Overly Sarcastic Productions. And it's a group of two people, and they both really like Breath of the Wild, and they were talking about the world building of the worlds around it, and just like stuff that isn't even mentioned in dialogue in the game, that are details that have been noticed. Like, one of the mountains inexplicably has a giant hole blown out of it, and you don't know why, and it's not mentioned. But like, they talk about stuff like that. What were you gonna say?
It's the Shadow of the Colossus inspiration.
Exactly. Like, and they mention stuff like that. They mentions a few things from like previous Zeldas and stuff like that. I mean, there's whole architecture styles that are from like a race that is barely mentioned by name. That's like very Maya and Aztec, and there's like a statue, or no, there are 7 massive statues in the desert, and one of them is across the entire map on another area, and in the line between them there's a stone sword buried in a mountain. And so it's like, what happened in all of this time? Like, did the statue come to life? What going on? Like,
the environmental storytelling, it's what makes
so good,
makes that world so great.
And I just sat through the whole thing, and it made me want to replay that game. So just anything that Breath of the Wild 2 does, or excuse me, the sequel to Breath of the Wild, I know that they could make a huge misstep with it, but I still think that at least if they keep like the world itself, as we've seen, they're reusing the assets, so at least at some level it's still going to have that Breath of the Wild signature. Even if they add a lot of BS, I still think it's going to be so good.
Think about it
just from that perspective.
This way. Eiji Aonuma in 2019 said that this was originally Breath of the Wild DLC. That was planned.
Right.
But then their ideas got so crazy that they were like, you know what? This can't just be DLC. Let's make it a game. So
just like God of War Ragnarok. So I'm starting to realize that's what you need when you want to capture the spirit of the original of something. And if it's like, hey, we were planning to put this in with this already amazing game, but it became so big and so strong that we just thought we're going to make it its own identity. Yes, it can stand on its own. It's got legs, and I think that's one of my favorite things to hear from a developer when they're like, "This was planned, but it was good enough that we wanted to put it elsewhere." The same thing with Venom in Spider-Man 2018, where everyone was like, "Oh,
the black
Venom,
suit
black
on.
suit," and he's like, "That deserves its own game," and I was like, "Yes!"
And we got it confirmed, 2023.
And we got it confirmed, obviously. So it's like, that's just, I'm realizing those are the arc words that I look for when somebody says something like that for a sequel. And Breath of the Wild, I'm so excited for that sequel, whatever it ends up being. They've got enough goodwill from me that I'll take just about anything. And I'll wait however long they need me to wait for
Misgivings aside, Zelda is Zelda for me. Zelda is the game where it releases, everything stops. I mean, despite me even not liking Skyward Sword HD that much, honorable mention for my Game of the Year stuff. When it came out, everything stopped because I wanted to give it that chance. Zelda has that pull. So if this game solidifies as a title and manages to also come out, I feel this could be potentially the biggest game this year. But as of right now, on January 17, 2022, happy MLK Day for whenever we're recording now. Yeah, it's like, this is all we know about this one, so it could slip. Hence why it's in honorable mentions. Before we move on, is it in your honorable mentions or top 10? Without telling me, okay. Hit me with an honorable mention, Paul.
All right, I realized that I wasn't prepared for this. All right, so Destiny 2 Witch Queen.
All right.
Honorable mentions. Because as I am sure it's probably in your top 10 if I had to guess. Yeah so we can talk about that because as we know, we just finished talking about this last week, how I dropped back in this year. So all of that stuff was all new to me. And I got an entire, 2 years worth of content that I got to build through and work on for several months. And it's definitely rekindled my love for that very almost niche style of blending magic and sci-fi that I just love it.
And Witch Queen seems like it's going to pull for that. Based on its aesthetic, and
it's getting a very creepy space vibe, almost Ridley Scott, kind of really creepy kind of look to it. And I adore it, and the gameplay loop is fun, and this is going to be a whole new level of content. So I might just simp and buy the pass for it now, just so it's ready and downloaded when it's time.
It's in 5 days, it's going to be a month before it comes out. Was that your cat?
It was, and he knocked stuff over. But I'll deal with that later, I'm sure.
So yeah, it's I'm excited for Witch Queen because Bungie has put extra time into this expansion that they usually didn't. They were always so adamant in trying to get an expansion out every year, despite the last few having some slight delays. Shadowkeep got delayed by a month. Beyond Light got delayed by 2 months. This one got pushed 6 months.
Yeah.
So obviously they at least proved that having a year without an expansion worked for them because the seasonal content they did was stepped up from previous seasonal efforts. And I'm glad hearing stuff they're fundamentally changing a bunch of stuff for the game, adding that crafting system. So that's gonna be interesting to see how it works, considering this game relies so much on RNG. The campaign, they have said that they have taken many inspiration from big single player stuff. When we watch the stream, words like Doom, Titanfall 2, God of War, those things were mentioned. So it's okay, that's you're mentioning some pretty big hitters for your campaign content. So those are pretty big shoes to fill. And to me, I always said it, Destiny 2 is crack cocaine for me. Every time anything new from that game comes out, that's all I have, and I can't wait because it's so close, Paul. It's so close.
It's surprisingly close. I keep forgetting about it. And what day is it for?
February 22nd, 2022. 2/22/22.
Jeez. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'm not much more to say about it, but I'm looking forward to it, and I know it's going to eat up at least a few weeks out of my life at some point. If not right then, probably right after. I'm
thinking at least campaign we can try to devour it then, because it's coming out in the middle of Hell Week and they're not pushing. If they would have pushed now, but they're sticking with it. And to be fair to Destiny, it's the Destiny community is the Destiny community, so they don't have to worry about other games around it. It's it's its own entity. So I'm very excited for that. Highly excited for that new expansion. My next honorable mention, Forspoken, that game that coming from the Square Enix Luminous team that kind of has very Final Fantasy 15 looks with like that Black Lady and all that. Forspoken has been a game I've been very hot and cold on. I was very hot on it when it was originally revealed at the PS5 reveal event without a name, because it was always called, when it was before called Project Athia.
Project Athia, yeah.
Yeah, and then we got the name Forspoken in one of the State of Plays in early 2021. That's when we knew the game was a weird isekai. I learned the isekai term thanks to you and Paul. I mean, and Zach. And then that game had like weird cursing happening, which was so weird considering the fantasy aesthetic, which
it's making more sense now.
Yeah, it's growing more on me on that. I would say that the one preview that came out early, like late last year, when the developers kind of described the way they animated the main character. That was a big the meme of the dude with the.
We gave her a real hip hop vibe, and we're like.
If that's what you're referring to, a colored person, especially in the year that we are after the things that came out in 2020, makes me a little worried that in the way they may be portraying some people of color there. The good thing is that this is a game that's coming out in May. It's got a release date now, so it's a wait and see. Hope if it's good, I'm definitely gonna try it. Good thing it's something in May. We rarely get stuff in May usually. May last year, shockingly, was surprisingly robust with Resident Evil 8, Returnal, and Mass Effect Legendary Edition. So, people, put more games in May. Put your games in May. Don't there's enough
right before the desert of summer, that's when you have those releases, you have the opportunity for things to come down in price, and that's when I'm looking for something and there's nothing coming out besides those one or two games that always come out in June or July. But Forspoken is also in one of my top 10. So the reason being is I adore a game, as I've mentioned to you, with some really nice forward momentum. And it looks
like it has that.
Yes, but one of my problems with Final Fantasy 15 is that when you move, he'll dash, but he just stops. And that was my same problem with Infamous Second Son, if you remember, where you had this really cool dash forward move, but he would just stop. He wouldn't kind of carry forward, really give you that feeling of movement.
And that was fixed in First Light, the DLC.
It was, it was also easily the best power in Second Son was the ability to just dash forward, and that was no problems with it. There's no reason to use any other power. But anyway, I got off for a second, and I remembered how much I enjoyed First Light. Anyway,
Forspoken.
Forspoken. So despite the fact that it's kind of weird with the whole person modern day falling into that, the West has finally caught on to that whole thing that is now just to give you a perspective how popular it is in Japan, there were 20 different new isekais anime made last year, just from that year. And it is crack cocaine for so many people, to the point that it's a meme. But anyway,
it might be big in Japan. Weird. Yeah, it might be big in Japan, where they're not into console gaming right now. Having that kind of game that feels like an isekai may be big there. So
and of course it's first party. Well, I guess second party technically with Square Enix.
It's a second party exclusive for PS5.
So I like the clothing that she has. It's a really cool flowy cape situation that makes you feel faster. The powers are really cool looking, where there's just not a lot of magic abilities that sound and look cool in games.
And the latest trailer, I feel the aesthetic, I bought it more when we saw that trailer in the PlayStation event from September.
Yeah,
that's when it looked weird. So I was like, I'm not vibing with this. But the trailer from the Game Awards that gave us the release date, I was like, okay, I'm vibing now more with with like
part of me thinks they did improve it and tighten everything up, because it did look really janky at times. Like it looks its best when it's pulled back and you're seeing the character running through taking out enemies, but whenever you saw like the face, the animations, it was like something's not right. But now it's starting to catch up, I think.
Yeah, I want to hope that it's good, because two writers I highly respect, Gary Witt and Amy Hennig, are working on it. Like they work on the
she
script.
Was working on that.
Yeah. So and Amy Hennig hasn't had a big game since Uncharted 3, at least publicly.
And it's not her fault either.
Yeah, exactly. She just had so much problems with development going from there after what happened to her Uncharted 4 and her Star Wars game. So, but yeah, definitely wait and see. I'm hoping it's good, because I would love nothing to have a really good game to play on May. Paul, hit me with your next honorable mention.
Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Okay.
This one's like you said, all my honorable mentions is kind of all over the place on levels, but Pokemon Legend Arceus is like one of the games that, even if it's not really what people need, I feel like it's the Pokemon company starting to learn that they need to change things up. But what they need to do is they need to make a spin-off game that does all those things, so if it crashes and burns, they can't say that it was a mainline Pokemon flop. So this is like, hey, it's a spin-off and see what happens or whatever. But what I definitely think is that they will be permanent changes in the mainline series if it's a success, and I really want it to be, because this is going to be the turning point, I think, for the series, because as we've known, competitors are starting to show up and they're not actually going away. Between Temtem and Dokev, Shin Megami Tensei for the hardcore fans
coming back, because Shin Megami Tensei is old series.
Yes,
very old.
Coming back with 5 on all the mainline systems at this point, I think, right? And I think they're realizing they need to start changing, and I'm hoping this is where they do that.
Yeah, Shin Megami Tensei is right now just on Switch. I don't know if it's on PlayStation yet or if it's coming to PlayStation.
I thought at some point it was, but I could be wrong on that one. But anyway, yeah, that was just what I was going to say with that one. It's not on yours at all, right?
None. I
didn't expect it.
Yes, I only know that it just looks graphically awful, but other than that, it's a Pokemon game, so people are gonna.
It's not the best, but I still think the style is enough that it doesn't really bother me all that much, like some things.
It looks like worse Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild, despite its technical limitations, is still a beautiful game. So
it's gorgeous, and I respect it a lot for that. But yeah,
my next honorable mention, Dying Light 2.
Okay, yeah, that's on my honorable mentions as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so Dying Light 2 is one of those that I enjoyed the first one a lot back in 2015. I never really finished it, and because this one's coming close and we have a little bit of a dry spell, I might go back, because there's so much of it that I really like, but it never really grabbed me to fully finish it. But it's the way the original game was so supported that it got even a battle royale mode, and how it's one of the few co-op games that you can play, like open world, like co-op games, that they're apparently doubling down with that for Dying Light 2. And the ways that they're making a very highly complex connected RPG with this one, with how they're connecting, like how all the choices you make like affect the different ways this game is gonna like unfold. And it's the reason why that game got indefinitely delayed 2 years ago, because they needed to work more on that. Back then, I remember when we talked about the indefinite delay, you were like, Dying Light 2 is dead, it's never coming back, but here it is.
I honestly, I'll eat the crow on that one, because I didn't think they were going to be able to come back. I didn't have any sort of
and that was before they got indefinitely delayed before the pandemic, like it is. So
I think I was thinking about Dead Island too.
Dead Island,
the one that like
completely
came out with that really amazing commercial, and then it was like, what the heck?
Dead Island 2. That's the one that completely went
that's
MIA.
gone.
And that's never coming back. It's like,
I don't think so.
It changed 3 developers. It's become vaporware, but
no,
I believe in Dying Light 2. That one had a little bit of a snafu last week, I think it was, when they posted those tweets. Man, your cat's like all over the place. Dang.
There he is.
But yeah, he's been the Dying Light, like doing parkour I don't know how he climbed there to your chair that I can't see.
It's wide enough on the top that he can sit on it, so sometimes he does that if I don't have space in my lap for him.
Makes sense, and then you can lay down and it being a pillow.
Yeah, basically, it's actually kind of nice.
They so going back to it, they tweeted that it was gonna take like 500 hours to like complete, and then they and then they went back and did like a lot of damage control. They're like, no, don't worry, that's if you do literally everything. And then if you want to be a little more deliberate in completing, but not 100%, it's going to be like 80 hours. But if you just mainline, it's going to be 20 hours. It's like, that brought up the conversation of like, do people realize that saying your game is a 500-hour completion is like a massive turn up for a lot of people? It's like, but I'm mildly curious. That's a game that I'm going to wait for reviews to hear how it is, if it's something worth investing in. It's an honorable mention because Dying Light 2 should have been something that we should have played last December. That would have been a perfect December game.
That's right.
And it got pushed.
Got pushed back. I forgot about that, honestly.
It got pushed into the Battle Royale this February 2022.
It was so off my radar that when they delayed it, I was just like, I'm probably not going to get it anyway. But just like you said, I picked up Dying Light on a whim on sale when it came out, and I was blown away by how much I enjoyed it. I was not expecting anything outside of just like a trash zombie game with like the parkour elements very heavily like
Mirror's Edge.
Like, oh, it's parkour, but it's not really. But I was so surprised.
It's
like,
better than Mirror's Edge.
I can run like anywhere. I can jump off and on like anything. It felt so good. And like when you're in the middle of one of those actual super tense, like, oh, the sun's going down, I am so screwed if I don't get out of here. And you're like dashing through alleyways, going up and running along rooftops and stuff. And even like I got really lucky with like a lockpick against like a cop car, and I got a rifle. And then I was like, I felt so excited because it was like one shot could take out a zombie, but you had such little ammunition, you had to make it count. But anyway, all that stuff.
It's a fresh zombie game. That's
the
what
extra content later, like several years later, adding vehicles, adding the extra co-op features, the battle royale mode. I remember my brother would play with all of his friends on it, and they were having the time of their lives. And I was like, why is nobody playing this game?
Do you still have it by any chance?
I don't know. I don't actually remember. If I have it, I'd be fine with playing it. I just can't remember if I do or not. It might be in my my bookshelf.
Yeah, it might be a disc, because remember, you were a disc dude before I switched
if
you
I
to the
did
digital.
have it, it would have been that. But I don't know if they gave it away for a month.
I think they did. It's been 7 years.
I would have downloaded it and then sold the physical copy. So either way, I'm pretty sure I have it.
Yeah, let's see if we have time. Let's toy around with the co-op one of these days.
If we can figure that out, I'd be fine with it. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And like, for the sake of how much fun I used to have with it, I'm like, if they really put that same level of effort in, it's probably going to be really good, honestly. So that's why I bumped it up, at least into my honorable mentions. But we'll see.
Yeah, since you
mentioned,
it's
a different world out there now than where we were.
Exactly. So, and it's coming out real soon. It's on February 4th. So,
oh shoot, yeah.
Yeah, it's very soon. It's the first battle royale contender that's gonna throw the first punch in that bloodbath that's happening in February.
I guess we'll see.
Since you mentioned Dying Light is also an honorable mention, I'm gonna mention another one.
Yep.
Marvel's Midnight Suns. The XCOM style like turn-based RPG from Firaxis, that was originally revealed at Jeff Keighley's Gamescom event, that then was originally supposed to come out in March, the second bloodbath of the year, before it got pushed to somewhere far down in 2022, but still this year, like in the second half. Good for them. I am always going to be interested in new Marvel games. Like, let's not beat around the bush. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy video game from last year, a massive surprise. I mean, it's my second favorite game of the year, your favorite game of the year, despite you not finishing it.
I know. I still haven't finished it.
Exactly. But it still made enough of an impression to be like, this was better than anything else I played this year. Yeah. And anytime that one of these comes out, I want to at least see how it does. At least this one looks different. It's gonna play different from anything else we're having. I'm very curious about its supernatural tinge and how deep that goes into that, because I sometimes supernatural stuff I tend to like keep sometimes at arm's length depending, but definitely curious.
Definitely depends. I want to see, once again, I completely forgot they've already revealed the gameplay, and I keep forgetting to go look it up. But everything that I've seen about it, it's got like that vague, like, okay, this seems like such a specific kind of game that whoever made it very much wanted it to be that way, in which case it's always going to be like at a certain level of polish that I'll respect it, even if it's not going to be like my style of game. Kind of similar to, and I know I keep saying it, XCOM. It's not like XCOM exactly, but that was such a specific game that I'm like, even if I'm bouncing off parts of this, I really respect what they're trying to do. Same thing with like Shadow of the Colossus, Horizon, all that stuff. It's like they wanted to do something. I respect the effort into it. That's actually on my list as well.
And honorable mentions?
No, top 10, yeah.
Oh, really?
It made the list. I won't say where, but that's like how curious I am. And that's why this is like, okay, anticipated, because I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't know if I'm really not, but it's unique enough that I'm just like, okay, let's inject it into my veins. I want to see that creativity. Let's go.
Give me another honorable mention, Paul.
We're going to have Sifu.
All right.
It did not actually make my top 10, shockingly enough, when it was on the
neither.
list. And it got knocked off barely, but actually it's one of those situations that the more I've seen of it, the less I've actually been
excited,
as interested. I don't want that to sound like a negative,
but hey, it's what they're showing. It's like, if it's not making you excited, you don't have to feign it.
It just feels like it's lacking a little bit of that polish that I was hoping for at first. I think it's still going to be really good, because what was the other game, Absolver, that they made, which was like...
It didn't look that polished either, and it was good.
It didn't, but it had a surprisingly large scope, where it was like this Dark Souls style of open world, where it's like branching paths, different areas to go explore and stuff, and then you would like just fight whoever came alongside you. You gonna come sit with me? Look at this boy. There he is.
There it is. Man, Felix is like being
he just looks angry, but he's
seeker.
It's because I wasn't home for a large part of the day. There he goes. But anyway, yeah, Absolver had like a surprisingly large scope, which kept me interested, because there was like different environments and biomes. It was just like this stretching world. But Sifu, it looks very much more focused on like specific missions, and like I watched 20 minutes of it and I felt like I had seen the whole game. So then I was like, unless they really trip me up with some different stuff, I mean, I'm hoping I'm wrong and I'm just misunderstanding it, but from like those trailers, the demo that they showed us was like one mission. I was like, okay, well, I get it now, and this is the gameplay loop, and you're just getting better as you play. But maybe I'm just missing it. And I think it's soon. Also right. That's another one that's early on in the fight. So yeah, I think it's like one of those games, just like you've said in the past, that it'll feel better to play than to watch, which I think is going to be the case for this, and I'm going to hold off any more judgment until then. Yeah,
it's a wait and see. My other honorable mention is Saints Row, the new Saints Row reboot. Saints Row reboot. That's a game that has shockingly gotten more negative reactions than I feel it deserves. I think it looks pretty cool, and especially after the last Saints Row thing was got out of hell, and that wasn't very good. And I'm glad this is one of those games that actually got pushed to August, because this was a game that was on February 25th.
It was going to get clobbered.
Oh yeah, especially when another big game got moved to that date that everyone is anticipating. So that will give them more time for polish, and it will give it. Ironically, the last Saints Row game came out in August, so I'm shocked that they didn't think about that early enough. But right now, since the later half of 2022 is not highly defined, I feel this is the perfect time for it to like make a mark. Definitely it's here. I'm curious about it, especially because GTA is just kind of MIA right now. We don't have that kind of world that has given us, in this society that has given us so many darn open world games, it's shocking that GTA likes are kind of not there. So that's kind of still fresh.
I think you probably blame Take-Two Interactive for that one.
Yeah.
But I think this is the perfect time for Saints Row to strike. Oddly enough, while the iron is very cold, because there's nobody else doing that specific niche style. And I think GTA has turned into Saints Row. If you really think about it, it is online, literally what Saints Row 3 was when it came out. And it has become exactly what they swore to destroy, and what all of the GTA fanboys were like, I need a realistic crime simulator where I could rob banks, and then the year of like flying a rocket car, which is just as absurd.
Exactly. But it's like because they wanted to keep feeding the beast that was GTA Online, they realized they had to get outlandish if they wanted to keep that thing alive. And to be fair to them, GTA Online is huge.
It's massive.
But
yeah, they're still coming out with like story expansions with the contracts bringing Franklin back into the story, which GTA Online is a prequel, but still, it's I haven't played any of that, but apparently it's decent.
Exactly, it's like I would at least expect that, considering that one title Rockstar just seems to just wanted to keep developing for over and over and over again. You would expect it to be good. But because of their insistence of just keeping that one game alive, it has left the market ripe for a rival. This is the time for Saints Row. I just hope it's good.
I hope so too. That was actually one that made my top 10 as well. Yeah. Because that level of polish that I saw in that trailer was like very surprising, and it gave me the Just Cause 4 vibes. That the first time I played Just Cause 4 I didn't like it, and the second time I really loved it. And this was like, okay, we're gonna get some craziness now. And I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, that was on my list. Is it my turn?
Yeah, hit me in with another
this
honorable
one
mention.
Is it's like barely there, but Crossfire X.
All right,
I just want to see what it actually plays like, really. Because we've been seeing like little stuff about it, and it apparently is already out in Asia, and it's like freaking massive over there. So I was like, whatever is good enough for that to be a good enough market, I'd like to see
the multiplayer that's free to play. That's been out in Asia. What's coming out is the campaign.
The campaign, okay.
That's made by Remedy, and
okay,
this one got booted, ironically, from my honorable mentions. Is not there because there was a preview of the campaign that some people got to sample some of the first 2 missions, and not so hot, some of the impressions.
Really?
And apparently it's not gonna be on Game Pass, which is like, what the heck? Especially for but this is an Xbox thing, so that sounds like a mistake. But
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm fine with eventually wiping that away, but I am curious just to see it in action. So yeah, that was one of them for mine. You want to jump into your next one?
The Callisto Protocol. This is.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, this is supposedly still a 2022 game that was originally thrown when it was originally revealed in the Game Awards of 2020. I'm really curious because this Callisto Protocol game, this horror game by Glenn Schofield, the guy that made Dead Space, the original director, is like
the original one.
Yeah, he's doing another horror game, sci-fi horror game with some similar visual like cues that reminds you so much of Dead Space.
Heavy influence.
Yeah, without it being Dead Space.
It's basically Dead Space, just without the name, but I am totally okay with those.
And for some reason, it is in the PUBG universe.
It what?
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes me curious. Like, why the specific?
You want to explain that one to me?
When they announced it, they were like, "We're doing a horror game that's set in the PUBG universe." I'm like, does the PUBG universe have like some lore? Because the PUBG to me, especially, it's coming on free to play pretty soon. Too little, too late. PUBG is like the most bland, like identity-less property. So,
in their defense, they were like one of the first to do that whole battle royale thing, and that was like a big deal.
No, it was. It literally.
Because I played it, I bought it for early access for like $30. On PC.
I bought the Xbox early access that came out December that year that it came out. That thing was bad, but
It was rough.
But PUBG was like, it started a movement. It's like, it was enough for Fortnite to be like, our save the world thing is failing.
We're going to turn our entire game into this.
A battle royale, because they're using our technology. So we clearly know it works. So we're just going to ape it and do it ourselves. And they became the biggest thing in the world. Screw you, PUBG. But yeah,
not even a game.
I just found it interesting that the Callisto Protocol is set in that universe. When to me, it's like, there's nothing in that universe that screams lore. Maybe they're just doing it to try to like tie themselves to the hip into something that's technically popular.
They must be trying to do that, because like PUBG is just a regular modern day thing, and at least from what I've played of it, it has no sci-fi elements whatsoever, or horror, of course.
No, not at all.
So yeah, that's weird. But hey, you know what? Dead Space gets a thumbs up. Same
just that
creative
enough.
Developers gets a thumbs up, and I'll at least look at whatever it is. So yeah, that could wipe out Crossfire X for me. Take out that, put Callisto Protocol.
Yeah, it's an honorable mention, because other than the year, I haven't seen gameplay, and we don't have a solid release date. We just know it's supposed to come out this year, especially because they announced that way ahead of time. That was an original 2022 game, not one that got pushed. So definitely want to see more, but knowing the track record, I would hope it would be pretty good. Paul, hit me for another one.
Total War Warhammer 3.
All right, you're a big Total Warhammer guy.
It's iffy. I'm more of a Total War fan.
Uh-huh.
I love what was it? Shogun 2 is like my all-time favorite. Empire Total War, I love that stuff. So like real-time strategy has like a complicated relationship with me, because on one hand, my dad grew me up with Civilization, so I understand very intimately the concept of economics from like age 4. But then like when they were like, oh shoot, you get to actually control armies and stuff, so I booted up Medieval 2 Total War, and I never turned back from that. But they've kind of dropped off the face of the earth with some of their latest games, and the last one I bought was Warhammer 2.
Okay.
And so even though like the universe itself I knew nothing about, it was weird enough and outlandish enough that I was like, okay, let's enjoy it. Craziest scope in the world. I didn't even come close to finishing one campaign of it. Took forever. But if they're gonna improve things, tighten things up, I'm interested in looking at it. Maybe not buying it yet, but I'm glad that it's a thing, and both for Warhammer fans and for Total War fans, because it seems like they've hit a really nice stride with both.
This one's definitely not on my radar in any way, shape, or form.
I wouldn't expect it.
But hey, it's an eclectic pick, and it's an honorable mention. So.
Once again, it's specific enough that I respect the heck out of the people that made it. But yeah,
and it could be good. So
I'm hoping so, because the last two have been solid. I mean, there's a whole race about riding dinosaurs. There's an edgy boy race. There's a race of rat people. It's like there's just so many weird things, and the DLCs have added like 5 or 6 more different factions, each even crazier than the last. There's like a race of dragon riders. It's crazy. They don't even care about like realism. It's like full on in their universe of like weird stuff. Yeah. So anyway, it's
can't
fun.
wait to hear more. So.
What you got?
Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah, that was a game that one of the ones that got bumped from 2021 and revealed at the second PlayStation event from 2020.
Did we even have actual gameplay though shown?
Not really.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a 2021 game, and then it got pushed an entire year. So it should come out sometime in 2022. When? Who knows? That game lost its creative director over some like controversy, some weird controversies.
Really?
Yeah, over like being right-wing stuff, and he got like hit by the left-wing hit pieces, and apparently that game has, from rumors say that game is still trucking along, but has lost a little bit of its identity. So that's something that I just want to be curious, because I feel Harry Potter is the kind of series that could potentially lend themselves to a really high-quality game, not one tied to a movie, like we were seeing with the later Harry Potter games from EA that quality was just like getting worse and worse because they were hitting at the same time as the movies with little depth time. This one has been in depth for a while, and obviously the whole Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling of it all, it's like a huge pile of controversy. I personally don't care. Harry Potter is Harry Potter, and I just want to see if it's good because I like high quality licensed products, but definitely not it's one I'm highly anticipated, but definitely want to see more. Hit me with another one.
Yep. Well, real quick, that is actually in my list.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I don't have much to add beyond what you said. I agree completely with most of it. Harry Potter has always been a series that lends itself to like an open world magic game that you can do so much. And I mean, that's basically most of why I'm looking forward to Forspoken, because it's open world, it's magic, and it's like Harry Potter has this weird blend of like magic users can do like whatever the heck they want. It's only limited by the budget of the movie that they're being shown in. But if you could get it, like if you could get it right where you didn't have to worry about that, you could make such an amazing game. And that's why I thought like they tapped into it just barely in those late ones that you hate, where it was like third person Gears of War, but it was like the spells are like different weaponry and you could just like blast dudes with like a rocket launcher blast. It's like
those
what they
games
did with
had
Control.
high potential. I think action based Harry Potter is good, but the way it was done, that it was like so stiff and so like
no, I'll
so
agree
badly
to that.
designed.
But like that gave me that itch of like, wow, what if we got something that could really just take the wheels off? And they've tried to do stuff like that with Lichdom Battle Mage, which was just a terrible game. But like, think about it, like you have this open range of like spells and you could just do like a first person shooter. Like, what a crazy concept. I just want somebody to do that right for once.
By the way, Lichdom Battle Mage was like officially the worst performing game on the PlayStation 4. It was like
really
10 frames a second. It was like,
yeah, exactly. I tried it. I bought it on PS4 and it was like unplayable. But can you imagine if somebody was able to get that to run at like 60 frames per second with the combinations you can do in that game?
What was so funny is that the release of that game coincided when rumors were that the PlayStation 4 Pro were coming, and that created a massive controversy because it was like, oh wait, so Sony 3 years after the release of PS4 is going to release a new PS4 that's going to be more powerful, and everyone that invested early, now it's like left in the dust. Oh wait, this game is running at 10 frames a second right now. It's like, man, PS4 owners got gypped. Yeah.
Oh man, what a good time.
Oh yeah, 2016. That's
praise God, GameStop gave me a full refund for that game because they heard about how bad it was, and my friend was like, "Yeah, just bring it back. We'll just give you a full refund."
Yes.
I've got a couple more because I think we're running to the end of the honorable mentions.
I have 3 more. So
okay, cool. So that'll line up with mine. Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga.
All right.
Skywalker Saga.
I gave it in my top 10.
Hey, okay, finally, I got one of the honorable mentions in yours. I loved the Lego Star Wars games, and I know these are like, it's the same storyline, but it's completely redone. But there's such a charm to those games that I am willing to dip into the Lego world once again, where it can be anything from like really great to absolute trash. If you've watched any of the Lego Star Wars things on Disney Plus,
oh yeah, do you see that Christmas special, the holiday special? Christmas,
I've kept so far away from that.
It was actually good. The holiday special they did, which is like a sequel to Rise of Skywalker, was actually pretty good.
That's so funny.
You should watch it. It's funny. It's like charming. It's better than Rise of Skywalker, if you would believe me. But everything could be better than Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, that's a low bar to pass, but
yeah. To me, like, the Lego game franchise has always held a special place in my heart because of the reliability of their comfort food gameplay. The collectathon, and also being family friendly. We rarely get games that are just like fun for people to play with their families in co-op and all that.
I will still say one of the best PS4 games that I ever got on a whim was the Lego
Star Wars.
No,
or
the
Marvel.
Lego Marvel.
Oh yeah, Lego Marvel superheroes.
Not the Avengers one. Yeah, the superheroes one.
Yeah.
Because it was like an entire Lego New York that you could just go into with all the heroes. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
That was a launch PS4 game, and that Lego game is excellent. I would say like
fun.
The Lego formula basically was like repeated in many different properties, and you just had to pick up the property you liked. So in the case there, I love Marvel, I love DC, I love Star Wars, specifically Star Wars. That the Lego Star Wars games were always my favorite. I obsessively played through Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy on 360. I 100% of the achievements.
The Clone Wars one was like really robust too.
Yes,
I remember doing full battles with like all the armies and stuff.
That one made me excited at the possibility of constantly getting Clone Wars games as the seasons went on, and we only got a Clone Wars game that was with the first 2 seasons, so we never got into the meteor of the content there. With that said, with Skywalker Saga, why it makes my list, I'm not gonna say where. It's just because this is an interesting one that it's finally shaking the Lego formula. It's shaking the perspective of how you play it. It seems like it's more of an open world game. There's a reason this game has taken forever to come out. It was originally revealed in 2019 to come out in 2020. And now we're in 2022 and it's still in a nebulous spring 2022 release window. But they say this is the year when it comes out. And I feel enough time has passed for me that I can enjoy a new take on Lego. And it's Star Wars. Star Wars is the property in entertainment that no matter what, it's always near and dear to my heart. So yeah, I'm excited for that one. And
what's one for you?
Next honorable mention, Tiny Tina's Wonderland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's coming out this year. It's coming out in March. It's still one of those games that's in the middle of the bloodbath. Borderlands 3, I wanted to like a lot. The main game was a disappointment. That DLC was actually pretty good. Just kind of like what I found with Outriders last year is like it had a Borderlands style of like looter shooter that wasn't like a full-time job. That part of me wants Tiny Tina's Wonderland to give to me what Borderlands 3 didn't, because Borderlands 3 just missed the boat for me. But I will always be curious to see if they do a good one of those. And I feel like if people say that one's good, that'll be good, because then that means, I don't know, when Outriders is doing another DLC, I need that alternate to Destiny in between the dry spells. So Tiny Tina's Wonderland could be, but we'll see. I like Tiny Tina though.
It sadly didn't make my list, either of them, but man, my experience with Borderlands 3 just really soured me on it, because I wanted to love it so good, but
with how good 2 was.
I played 2 too much, and I tried to play 3 too much to wait for it to like get to that point of like, yeah, like it's really vibing now. But at that point I was just like, oh no, this is kind of, I'm losing it. And I think a lot of like the humor just fell flat to me, so I'm worried that they're doing the same thing. I'm glad they're bringing Tina back, because she was probably one of the best parts of it. Yeah. But I think I just need to wait and see on that one. Yeah,
that's in March, so we'll know soon. People will tell us if it's good or not. So that's why
I'll be in the middle of playing Elden Ring and all the other stuff at that point.
Oh yes. But hit me with another one, Paul.
We're reaching the end of it. I'm gonna leave this last one because I know it's gonna be on your top 10. So the next one I'm gonna say was Little Devil Inside.
All right.
That's the one.
That's coming out soon.
You've been clowning on me for years about that, because each time I say it's anticipated, they push it back again. But now it's got like the big budget money from Sony first party, and it's supposed to come out. I mean, it was supposed to come out last year, but COVID
sometime
happened,
in this 3 months. I know that. Yeah.
It's supposed to be this year. I honestly don't even remember when, but each time I see it, it's just, once again, that unique style. It's like the same aesthetic that I liked Metroid Dread about originally, when I told you, where it looked like you were looking at a little diorama and the characters just looked adorable and tiny. But then it's like this really robust Breath of the Wild / Shadow of the Colossus style monster hunting game. And so I'm like, okay, well, this has got my curiosity. where you can like pick different weaponry, travel the world. You got like the little trains that bring you to different areas. It's got this weird cutesy but really creepy also vibe, almost like Little Nightmares. So I definitely want to try it out, and I really hope it's good.
Yeah, I'm hoping too, because the place, especially coming into the PS5 side of things, I feel that ecosystem has to do a better job at keeping that kind of indie game kind of like flowing in between the big ass AAA exclusives.
Yeah,
there's a reason the PS4 generation was so big, was because they gave equal amount of importance to the indie, next to, especially when they had a dry spell of exclusives, because they were taking a long time to make. And especially with the recent rumors we heard that they were maybe getting a little too focused on just the big stuff and the AAA, and then suddenly we got a cool indie game like Kingdom Breach of Spirits. I hope they still put their money where their mouth is with the indie, and I just hope this one's good. When does it come out? I had to look it up, but yeah, that's one that I know you've been excited for a while.
It keeps changing like all the time. I don't even trust when it's going to really come out. But one thing that I worry about with a lot of the way Sony's treated the indies lately is because they'll show it when it gets announced, when it gets release dates, and then they do nothing to help them when it comes out. Because like you've seen, I only find out about a game that I thought I was really interested in during like E3 or Sony's State of Play when it goes on sale randomly, and I'm looking through all of the on sale stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, I was interested in that. Why didn't they tell me when that was coming out? I would have bought it. Yeah,
for every Kingdom Breach of Spirits and Solar Ash, they need to do better to like highlighting more, especially because in the PlayStation side, I was listening to a podcast about it. It's like, any concern in the Xbox side that maybe they don't have exclusives, that goes out the window because they have freaking Game Pass there.
Yeah,
so
they can
it's like,
afford that.
And obviously Sony, we got rumors that Spartacus, their version of Game Pass, is happening this year. That could be a way for them to do indies if they're not willing to do like the day one first party like Microsoft does, because they like selling their games. Maybe they can use that system to push more their indies and give it the indie ecosystem a better, more approachable time. Because I tell you, I play more indies on Xbox now because how many of them show up in Game Pass. It's like the barrier of entry is so small. So this is my second to last honorable mention, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I'm putting this one in because it got a release date recently in March. That's a late entry to the Battle Royale bloodbath that's happening. So,
it's a nice palate cleanser, I think, for everyone that gets blown out during that time. It didn't make my honorable mentions, but if I redid it, I'd probably put Kirby in there, just because I'm not a big Kirby person usually, but everyone that I know plays it really enjoys it, and unlike Sonic fans, they're not super toxic about it. So I'm more willing to try something Kirby related, because everyone's pretty just chill about Kirby. Yeah,
Kirby, I feel, hasn't had a mainline entry in like a decade. Since
what was that 2D one that they had recently? That was last year, right?
They had a 2D one in the Switch, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember playing the demo for it, but it hadn't had like a big mainline console entry until this one. And this one, I may be wrong about this. There's the rumors that the Mario Odyssey team is working on this one.
It looks like that would make sense.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
Obviously, the rumors was that they were doing Donkey Kong. Maybe they're also doing it. Who knows? Because I would imagine that a company as big as Nintendo, that they need to keep feeding the beast with first party exclusives, because they can't fill up their system with anything else otherwise. They would want to do that, and definitely want to hear how good this one is. Maybe that could be a game that we create an escape account for
the Switch.
For the Switch, because those games never go down in price. So
yeah, Lord.
Yeah, hit me with another one, Paul.
My final one, which I guarantee is on your top 10, is the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League.
It is.
This is not my cup of tea as much, but it looks so polished and so passion filled that it's got me like, man, you know what? Like, if it's a solid game and I am sitting at the end of the year and there's a sale, I would absolutely pick it up. Yeah. But it's not something that I'm like, frick yeah, because as we've noticed, I have a very specific bias where I hate good characters being presented as evil. And it's like, oh, he's so powerful, so he's going to be evil, and we need somebody to kill him. Like, what's Harley Quinn gonna do to Superman? Come on, guys, come on. But and the same thing with like Flash being in it. Like, what are they gonna actually do to stop Flash? Just magically cap him in the knee, like in Justice League Snyder Cut. But yeah, so I mean, all of my misgivings aside, it seems like a really fun little jaunt. Feels like the same people that would have laughed at all the jokes in Borderlands would really enjoy this. So this is like the coming of age for that kind of fan, I think. So we'll see. But I mean, if I enjoyed the Suicide Squad and laughed at most of the Peacemaker series, I think this will be entertaining.
You just nailed why it's in my top 10. I don't necessarily where it is, but like the Suicide Squad as a brand has really been like rejuvenated thanks to James Gunn and what he did with the 2021 movie. Because let's not forget, the 2016 movie by David Ayer, at least the cut that he had to the studio did for David Ayer's Suicide Squad, was awful. That was a bad movie. And everyone was like, why are you doubling down on the Suicide Squad? That 2016 movie was beyond awful. But no, like, they gave it to James Gunn. James Gunn found an interesting tone that takes from the Ostrander run on comics that's like more crazy. It's crazy violent, it's crazy, it's funny, and I feel James Gunn nailed that. And I feel like that's what Rocksteady has really nailed with this, like especially tonally. They definitely saw what James Gunn was pursuing with his requel, and they realized, especially it's funny this game is coming from Rocksteady, because think about Arkham Asylum, City, and Night. Those games are dark and grimy and dour. And this one is like a complete opposite, despite apparently being set in the same universe. And
that makes me laugh so hard, because we've seen what the rest of that universe is like. And to imagine Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill's characters standing next to freaking King Shark or Peacemaker is like, what?
Yeah, and that's in the movie side, and now we're getting that in the game side, kind of like that dichotomy in tone. And based on the gameplay we saw at Jeff Keighley's Game Awards this past year, it looks like the Suicide Squad looks a lot like Sunset Overdrive. I love Sunset Overdrive, and it's a co-op enabled Sunset Overdrive.
Forgot that was a thing as well.
I can think about that could be a really massive haven of fun, and I hope it's good. I really hope it's good. It's Rocksteady, despite some misgivings I have by with some aspects of Arkham Knight, like F the Tank. Those 3 games are high quality, and I believe that them taking this much time, this long, to make a new game means that they're like putting all their in for it to make it quality. So I'm hoping, especially like I believe in them until. This is like, I trust you until you prove me otherwise. So that's why that game is in my top 10, but I won't say where. My final game in honorable mentions before we move to top 10, their official top 10, Ghostwire Tokyo. That
should go in my honorable mentions as well, actually.
Yeah, so Ghostwire Tokyo is the second of the 2 games Sony negotiated with Bethesda to make them a temporary like PS5 console exclusive. The other one was Deathloop. This will be like, for all intents and purposes, the last Bethesda game PlayStation is ever gonna have, and it's an interesting looking one because it's not the full-on horror game that The Evil Within was. It's more actiony. It's more like high energy, and obviously we saw that Slitterhead, the game that was from the Silent Hill director or creator that was revealed at the Game Awards, that it seems like people are pursuing this horror comedy almost, or kind of like horror high energy instead of like the horror dreariness. And I'm just curious to see like if Tango Gameworks can find success with Ghostwire Tokyo, because they abandoned Evil Within after 2 games. So, and I like those games, especially as a big Resident Evil fan.
They officially said they gave up on that IP?
Yeah, because they moved it to this one. So,
man.
Yeah, we could have gotten an Evil Within 3, but they decided to go for this one. So, let's see. It's and I wonder what Sony saw, that they were like, yeah, well, let's strike a deal to make it exclusive, like a console exclusive.
For whatever reason, they really like whatever Ghostwire Tokyo's got. But I mean, this is the same company that gave really strong app possibility to the unnamed
Yeah.
game that
That didn't make
apparently might
any list.
just be a scam.
Yeah. But that's the
Which we
thing.
still haven't seen anything from.
Yes, exactly. But let's just say at least this is Bethesda. Bethesda known quantity. They I always find it funny that Bethesda and PlayStation have never been the best partners at all. Like, go back to Skyrim PS3 and the mistreatment Sony fans got over that game and how busted that version was. That it's so funny that going into this PS5 generation, the mostly Bethesda, the company that it's always in bed with Microsoft. That's always in bed, and obviously Microsoft bought them because they always had that relationship. That Sony was willing to make this kind of deal with that company. So they must have seen some. And to be fair with Deathloop, it's like, again, that's a game that lost its luster as the year went by after we beat it. But I initially enjoyed a lot of that, so I was like, yeah, I can see why Sony saw that. They don't have a shooter. This seemed like a fun shooter. So yeah, Ghostwire Tokyo. So cool. Paul, do you want to take a little break before we move into top 10?
Yeah, just for a short one. I mean, honestly, most of what I've has been on an honorable mentions list.
Yeah,
has been
yours
on
is gonna go quick.
The
Mine's not.
Mine's gonna go so quick. So yeah, if you want, we can take a quick break.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break that you guys are not gonna see, and we'll be right back. And we are back from a break, and apparently my good friend Paul cut his hand in between the break. So a lot of things can happen sometimes in break, but sometimes we need to stretch our legs. So Paul, now it's a big one. We're moving into the top 10. Now these are the 10. There's like, these are the ones that we are definitely more anticipating.
Yes.
And my number 10, you already talked about it. Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga.
All right.
I already don't need to say more than other than I'm excited to see the new formula, how it's gonna evolve, and hopefully it comes out this year. Hit me with your 10.
Same. Midnight Suns. So that was my bottom right there, and it barely made the cut, but it's just unique enough that I'm like, I would really like to see this and pay to see it. Number 9 for you.
Elden Ring.
Okay, that's lower than I thought. Okay.
So it's lower than most would anticipate, just simply because I'm not a Souls guy. I've just not.
We kind of talked about that.
Yeah, because it's just too hard of a genre sometimes to me to really break in. Sometimes I break in, like Bloodborne. Bloodborne was the one that really I was able to understand its intricacies, was able to beat it. Took me a little longer than I would have, but it was a fantastic game that I'm glad I got to see through. And I would hope that Bloodborne eventually gets like a PS5 patch, something to that its majestic art style and performance could like shine in better hardware.
People have been crying for that on PC for so many years. I'm starting to give up hope, frankly, but
I tell you, Bloodborne, if Bloodborne gets any kind of re-release, especially right now that PlayStation is like more open at putting their exclusives on PC, like recently God of War that has blew up massively on PC right now. But Elden Ring, I have heard many things about how open it has become now. Like a lot of Breath of the Wild has been mentioned, and mixing that.
Did you watch any of those demos?
I didn't, because
so that's one reason. Because I got to watch all that, and it is the Dark Souls formula on such a new level that has me like shook in parts, because it's just like what you've seen where you've got your builds, your armors, your weapons, and all that stuff, the similar kind of move sets, but you've got a new level of magic that you can do that was never seen before, and a much more desire for the game for you to use it. So it's not just this is your build and you can't go outside.
And the verticality of Sekiro.
The verticality, the mount that lets you do both mounted actual combat and using it to like propel yourself out of it to like get across gaps, to attack enemies from it, kind of like with Tsushima. And to jump up like cliff sides and things to really get the lay of the land.
It feels like an evolution of the formula. You can see the hallmarks, but you see it being expanded. And for that reason alone, I want to try it. Like I want to see how this moves into a new, into a different style compared to like the more segmented, separate hub areas of previous Souls games.
And it's got a jump button, which means
Sekiro.
platforming out the wazoo.
Exactly. It's the Sekiro. Considering the Sekiro was the last game Miyazaki made, makes sense. So, like I said, because of my level of dexterity with these kinds of games, that's why it's lower in my list. But considering it's one of the bigger games of this first 2 months, I'm highly looking forward to it. Your number 9, Paul.
My number 9 is Gotham Knights.
Okay, that's in my list also.
Yep. So I know like the style of it wasn't as much at first when I was looking at it, and there was a lot of like questions on, okay, this is like, what kind of game is this? How is it really going to play? But I know enough that like when I play as a different character in one of the Arkham games, they're so unique that I love just experiencing the differences while also knowing the similarities, because it's the same buttons, but it's such a different move set and style that you can feel like you're really getting something out of it. With a game built entirely around the 4 different characters,
and it's co-op also.
And it's co-op, and it's still like kind of an open world and stuff. So I'm like, all right, let's see what we've got going on here. And I'm about it for sure.
I absolutely love the Arkham series. I absolutely love that gameplay. I love that perspective, how it was handled. And based on the gameplay I've seen of Gotham Knights, it feels like they're keeping that intact while adding even more RPG elements to it. Like enemies have... it reminds me a lot of some of the things we saw in Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War.
Yeah.
In some of the RPG trappings, with some of the enemies sometimes being a higher level than you are, and but no nemesis system. I would have loved to see them do a nemesis system, because we haven't seen it done in a WWE game since Shadow of War. But just the idea of being able to play as the Bat Family, and because I have realized that in the Batman universe, I'm not as big a Batman fan as I am a Bat Family fan. Like, I just find there's something more rich about the people under him. The Nightwings, the Robins, Batgirl.
I think people have realized the most interesting thing about Batman at this point, where we've explored just about everything that he can do, is that obviously he's going to win and beat everyone every time. So now it's becoming the expansion of it. Like, it's not just him anymore. He has to do it for himself and protect those under him. How are they going to do the same thing? It's like the problem that they had to deal with, the same thing with Superman. And now it's like, okay, well, we're going to now shift the focus to somebody who's not as powerful yet, and see how that changes the character. And I love when they do that.
And obviously this game, the whole story about this game is that Batman is dead. I don't believe that for a second. I want to see like how they ride themselves out of that.
Well, that's I thought that's how Court of Owls either began, or at some point they showed that.
I mean, the Court of Owls is like a massive part of this game. They're like the linchpin behind this game.
Right.
The big difference though is that the Court of Owls now, it's a Nightwing and team dealing with them.
Right.
And because the Court of Owls is highly tied with Batman's origin and the core of Batman, especially if you read that Scott Snyder book that eventually leads into the Dark Knight's Metal crossover. It's like, it's crazy, with like a bat demon that from like the multiverse that had something to do with like Batman's origin. It's like crazy. You should
I did read The Batman Who Laughs.
Yeah, he came out from that. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Batman Who Laughs came from Dark Knight's Metal.
Because I initially I played the Batman VR, which ended up actually being a Batman Who Laughs origin. I don't know if you.
I never played. I never played that one, but.
Either like read a synopsis or watch somebody play that, because it's actually a really crazy like set of twists into that, because you're like Batman trying to deduce Nightwing's murder, basically. But that was crazy. And
yeah, it's like did they walk that back, because supposedly Arkham VR isn't set in the Arkham universe and Nightwing is alive at night.
It was, but when at the end there's some kind of reveals that it's not actually in the Arkham universe.
Okay. Makes sense.
There's some changes there, but that's what made me curious, and one of my friends who showed it to me was like, okay, well, you should now read The Batman Who Laughs. And so I read through that like short issue of it to explain all that, and I was like, oh crap, this is
Batman
crazy.
Who Laughs is literally the one thing that has stayed in continuity after Dark Knight's Metal, like the one element that they have kept in like the normal Batman books. So yeah, it's like I'm really curious how they handle it, because I know Scott Snyder got consulted in this, so I wonder how much input he had in the story and how they handle the story without Batman, because Court of Owls, like I mentioned, is like very tied to Batman. But
I think they'll just say he faked his death. I mean, it's just like Dark Knight Rises, where he like blew up, and then they're like, "Oh, he was there all along," and I'm like, "Of course he was."
And they mentioned that this is not a service game. I hope so, especially with the co-op element. With like neither this one and Suicide Squad have been said to be like this live service games, which makes me very pleased after how that hurt a game like Avengers. That could have been a strong single player game without any service element. So yeah, highly excited for Gotham Knights. That was supposed to come out in 2021, so
yes,
we should be getting this one.
I agree. I think so as well. Which one of us is next?
Me, because Gotham Knights was your 9, right?
You're right. Yeah.
Number 8 was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League for me. So I already talked about it. In Rocksteady I trust. Until they prove me wrong, I feel the game really looks phenomenal. So can't wait to see more. Ironically, it's also scheduled for 2022. To me, it's weird that the two WB games are scheduled for 2022. I would imagine Suicide Squad could slip, but they're still adamant that it's still there. They initially had said it was going to come out in 2022. Rocksteady's been working on this game for 6 years, so I would hope that they're close to the finish line.
Wow.
The footage that we've seen looks polished enough.
It does look polished. I think it's like, I mean, if we lived in a perfect world, Gotham Knights would have already come out, and then this is just the year for Suicide Squad. But because Gotham Knights got pushed back, now we've got 2 in the same year. Yeah,
and now we know Wonder Woman is an upcoming DC property now.
2023 or 4.
Yeah, whenever. I don't remember it being put a year when it was revealed at the Game Awards.
I'm just guessing.
But now I know that they have something coming up, so they could potentially get away with releasing both these games, as long as they're not too on top of each other and don't cannibalize each other. But so funny, we haven't had a DC game since 2017 with Injustice 2. Literally 5 years. And now both of these come out. It's kind of crazy that DC was kind of more consistent with releasing some games, even though they were just Batman games. And then they kind of left us hung up to dry for Marvel to just release everything from there. So
it's true, because we stopped at 2017, and then Marvel said, "All right,
Spider-Man,
boys, let's go."
Spider-Man 2018, and then Miles Morales in 2020.
Everything after
Avengers, all of that. So, and 2019 was Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. So Marvel has been feeding. So
yep, Marvel's been eating good.
Yeah. Number 8,
I'm still waiting for that Superman game. Anyway, 8 for me was Hogwarts Legacy.
All right.
We talked about that, and I hope it ends up being good. What about you? 7.
Gotham Knights. So in this case, like, you can make the argument that Suicide Squad looks more polished, especially because it comes from a more trusted developer in Rocksteady versus WB Montreal that's doing Gotham Knights, who last did Arkham Origins, the the black sheep of the Arkham family, and the studio that hasn't released the game since 2013. So they've gone kind of, because apparently they were wanting to do a Suicide Squad game, and they got canned because Rocksteady wanted to do it. They tried doing a Superman game, and then that got canned, and then they finally settled on this Gotham Knights game. But now there's rumors they're going back to the Superman project, and maybe they're finally gonna get it right this time. So hopefully, I'm hoping for you. I'm putting this one above Suicide Squad just because I feel in my gut we are actually getting this game this year compared to Suicide Squad. I could see it just kind of like playing business semantics, like, unless WB is stupid to release both these games on top of each other, and considering Gotham Knights was supposed to come out last year, that's why I feel, of these two, I'm gonna give the nod a little bit to Gotham Knights, because I also like the characters better, because as much as I like the Suicide Squad, it's like the Bat Family is still a notch above it for me.
Bat Family is like perfect, both family dynamic and character dichotomy, back and forth, with each of them having a different relationship with each other. And the webtoon like nailed it for their relationships to one another.
Hit me with your 7.
Saints Row.
All right.
That was it right there.
I hit you with the lower list with my honorable mentions.
I know. I'm wondering if I just have bad taste.
No, you don't. You're gonna laugh at me for this next one.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, what's yours next?
Chaos.
Stop.
Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin is my number 6 and most anticipated game of 2022. The demo sold me on this thing. And I'm glad I played it in the difficulty that I did, because I'm like, if I can play this and I find this as fun as I did with this option, hell yeah, I'll do.
Yeah.
And obviously we had a fun podcast because you didn't play on that difficulty that would have given you the experience.
I played it on what most people would usually just pick on a normal video game. And who would have thought I'd pick the punishing option?
Yes, because it's still a Souls-like. So, that was probably what didn't kind of initially click with you. And to be fair, I went back and played on normal. It's definitely harder, but I approached it in an even more meticulous way and realized how much of a Final Fantasy game it still is. That you don't get just the satisfaction of wailing at enemies. You have to strategize. And if I'm honest, I feel the meme potential of Stranger of Paradise, the Edgelord, just that legendary clip of the I had to become chaos, so so my friends could strike me out and they can end me from this dangerous dream. Bullshit. Limp Bizkit, walk away. I mean, it's...
Man, I do respect it for how heavy it goes into the hot topic side of things. One thing I think I was able to verbalize one of my issues where if the combat felt more like Nier Automata, I feel like it's trying to do that, but it doesn't have the same smoothness.
Yeah.
And that's where I like...
Not with the perspective, because I know how Nier Automata feels in the controller scheme. It's absolutely aping Dark Souls. It's paced like Dark Souls. Yeah, it's paced like Dark Souls. It's like the camera perspective with the lock and all that. That's straight up Dark Souls. So you have to play it as a Dark Souls.
No, hang on. You play it like Devil May Cry, Nier Automata.
Yeah,
exactly. The lock-on is there, but... Besides that, I mean, you've got your light attack and your heavy attack, but
R1,
it is
R2.
so wild with maybe I had it mapped to the square and triangle, but it was very much like you had a dodge button that basically instantly negated everything, that you could just kind of like teleport to the side, and it was so
I don't even remember like it even giving the option for me to remap to square and triangle, because that game was straight up Dark Souls. So I don't know.
I don't know that. I never felt like, of all things that I have my gripes with Nier Automata about, but the combat was
Nier Automata is a square triangle.
So that was like one
DMC
thing that I really remembered.
Yeah, but Stranger of Paradise is not trying to be Nier Automata. It's trying to be Dark Souls.
Saying.
The Nier Automata is straight up Devil May Cry. It's the quick square triangle and the dodging and all that. That's a straight up action adventure brawler.
Yeah.
Stranger of Paradise is more Dark Souls.
It should have been something like that.
Exactly. We can make that argument that it could be.
I dabble into dangerously close to the my idea is better than theirs, but for everything that you see in Stranger of Paradise, it feels like it should be
the other ones.
That style of game. So fair enough with that, but it's just so strange with the way that there's like a dissonance. But anyway, we've had that conversation.
Yeah, I'm just very excited. I'm excited for it. If the reviews are really bad when it comes out, maybe I will recant. But I feel that game has some potential. It's like, despite its meme edgelord status, I feel there's just something to it that I just kind of want to experience, because it's weird to see a game in the AAA space be this audacious and so tone deaf. So you're number 6, Paul.
Is that where we're at? Yeah, 6. Horizon Forbidden West.
All right, that's in my list also.
We've finally gotten to that point because I have a reveal that I finally finished.
You finally finished it.
Horizon for Zero Dawn.
Yes or no,
yesterday.
the ending was phenomenal.
It was great.
I told you.
It's so funny that it took until like the second to last mission for it to finally click.
It finally did for you.
I played the entire game
Uh-huh.
just trudging and struggling through it. And then it finally was like, oh shoot, this is awesome. And I had to put it on easy.
Mhm.
I realized I had very poorly like spec'd out weapons.
Mhm.
Even though
It has more depth than even apparent, right?
well, my problem was like I wasn't min-maxing the right way. I was like, okay, well, we're just gonna boost damage, that'll work, boost handling or whatever.
Mhm.
And then I realized, like, of course, certain weapons for the arrow, it would have what you're supposed to really focus on that bow for.
Mhm. Because
And
then
when
you
I
can
realized-
scan and see the weakness and then pick the right bow to hit
Right,
that
which,
weakness
I
and
mean,
combine.
It was mostly like for me the idea that like, all right, well, I've got my sharpshooter bow, which is like entirely on tear damage, and then I've got this slingshot that's entirely on like blast stuff. I will say though, I burned through like my entire game's stockpile of not categories, components in like this span of like 6 hours of the last part of the game. And I just had to keep like buying more because I was apparently not getting a whole lot of components for everything else. But I had to get rid of one of my bows, which I realized had just terrible damage. It was like the regular purple bow that you get, and it was doing nothing for me, so I had to just completely change my
it's a game that
loadout,
you have to like
specs.
really understand its intricacies and not being like, especially if you're someone that, now from what I understand based on some of the games that just don't click with you, you just want that quick time to kill sometimes. And Horizon is more deliberate than that, and you have to really understand it for the combat to really click. And to be fair, some people didn't. Some people took the entire game to be like, yeah, the mechanics didn't quite click for me, and I can understand that sometimes because it's different from anything else.
And yeah, so eventually it finally got to that point, and with like the siege going on with I will say I love the those like big broad looking mech Metal Gear looking dudes. Every time those guys showed up, I was like, yeah, that sucker looks big.
And hey, to be fair, you finally played with the PS5 enhancements at 60 frames.
Right.
So
dude,
your aiming should have been
good.
Yeah, your aiming should have been much better now.
I was sniping dudes left and right. And then another thing is that I wasn't getting the skins from the regular animals to like really boost my whatever they call it.
Ooh, they were doing the crafting, the Far Cry stuff.
I wasn't
crafting.
doing the right. I was trying to like build it, but I wasn't able to like find them because they weren't standing out as well as all of the other metal creatures. So I wasn't going out of my way to find the fox, and then you had to like get RNG to get like the specific part of the fox that you need. And I was like, that
can be very annoying because you're constantly rotating, hoping that this kill is gonna give you finally the thing.
So that was a little frustrating, but I'm glad that I had enough to get over the edge with it. And then I think the last thing that I was going to mention was what was it? Give me one sec. It was like the skins, the skills. Was that I did not have the right ones at all for like getting, like, I was crafting stuff, but there's a skill that says you get more out of using the same amount of components. Didn't have that the whole game.
Wow.
I didn't have certain other ones, but I didn't understand what I was supposed to be like focusing on the most. So I had like the whole left side of it done, and then the right side, which had like these really important skills, I just didn't have done. So the second I did them, I was like, oh, this is a lot better. It makes my life so much easier. Gosh. So I just wish that, like, I don't know why I didn't notice what was like the right thing or understand it, but at least I got through it.
I feel this is a game that had you restarted it now, like with the intention to really understand, because you have played this game not initially understanding, and then you have gone back to it over and over and over again, kind of like in parts, and it's kind of, I will tell you, it's like, I'm surprised you were able to finish it, because even me, that I love Zero Dawn, going back to this, like, oh yeah, it's like I have to kind of warm up to this. This is a more complex game. This is not a pick up and play, maybe to its detriment, I would say, but I'm glad you finally finished, because
I'm glad
Forbidden
I realized
West is so close.
I had 2 missions left. That was all I needed. And so it was mostly really like linear, very focused missions, and then of course like the turning point and being on easy, even with like kind of getting shot a lot more than I needed to be. I was able to just power through, enjoy myself, enjoy the payoffs, the final reveals for the storyline,
because the story is really good. Like that story is so great.
They really had to know that that was such a terrible idea to have one thing that's specific job was to kill everything else. Like, come on, guys, y'all had to know that was going to backfire.
I still say that what Zero Dawn is, like at the reveal of why society reverted that way. It's such a cool reveal.
It was pretty awesome. And then especially after she realizes it and walks out and everyone treats her like a god, and she's like, no, get up, you stupid freaking idiot.
Yeah, you never treated me like this. I don't want this. It's like a subversion of the Chosen One narrative that plagues a lot of these games that deal with Native American style trappings. Go back to Avatar and all of that. I feel that's pretty cool. I would say why Horizon Forbidden West makes my list, still not saying where. It's because I feel the sequel has the potential to be the Assassin's Creed 2 to Assassin's Creed 1 improvement to this one.
After seeing everything that I walked through, all my gripes with the first one, already seeing like the reveal had handled some of that, and then being like, oh shoot, the story ended really well. I want to see what happens next to Aloy and everyone else. Because in the end, like, I don't know why it felt like it took so long to understand any of the characters, really. But once you finally understand them, I was like, okay, I'm empathizing really well with Aloy, with even Silence. It took me literally the whole game, but her buddy with the stupid mutton chops.
He's coming back on the second game.
Yeah, and I hated him for the whole game, and then finally at the end I was like, all right, you know what, this guy's an idiot, but I really appreciate it.
I would say though that maybe to the game's detriment, a lot of cool character building happens in side quests. That then when you complete those side quests, they join you in the final siege. Like the ending can change who helps you at the end based on how much you invest on the side quest.
Yeah, I've got like I had a handful of people, but I had a feeling it was like, oh, I'm sure there's going to be one of those, like, especially when the whole part of the last mission was check on like your crew, and that's always one of those, oh, come see all the awesome stuff you did in the side quest. But I was just like, I need to finish this game. Yeah,
the sequel's coming. I'm just glad you finally were able to finish it, because I was always wondering, were you really going to jump into the second one without doing the first one?
I wasn't, and I knew I needed to, so I had like a lull where I was like, I'm burnt out on Kingdom Come Deliverance for right now. I don't want to play Guardians of the Galaxy, don't want to play Hitman. You know what, let's just see where I'm at with Horizon. And I already had it downloaded, so I didn't have to wait.
And every preview we've seen, like from the articles, for the videos, the state of play we've seen, is like they're adding more verticality to the game for a game that feels very stuck to the floor sometimes in the movement. And again, you see a bunch of Breath of the Wild inspirations with how Aloy is going to interact with her world also. Seems like the melee combat, which I would agree, it's not that great in Zero Dawn. They're doing a concerted effort to giving you that more physical option, more alt abilities. And again, it's like I mentioned, that first game I really love, but it's also a first proof of concept for Guerrilla. It's their first ever open world game. Now they get a crack at a second, and I always say, like, that jump from Uncharted 1 to Uncharted 2, the jump from Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2, the jump from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2. We haven't had a jump where the second game feels like it's going to be like the caliber of like, this is going to fulfill the potential that was always there in those first games, but the roughness could always kind of chip it apart. And the fact that it's so close, February 18th, we're so close to playing it, makes it very...
I'm glad I didn't have to wait for like 5 years.
5 years
since that game came out, and I bought it like a month after its release, and I just finished.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, that's a game that you should have bought when it came out, because hard to go back to it after playing Zelda.
It is
very hard.
I remember now, that was my problem, because I bought Zelda on release, and then I turned that on and went, oh no.
Yeah, this feels old now. Yeah, it's like
gosh.
So yeah, I'm not gonna say where it landed, but you would probably be surprised. So
what is next for you?
I am saying this one because in Jeff Grubb I trust. This could slip, but I believe in this developer because of how long they take to make their games. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order 2.
That's this year?
Yeah, that's what Jeff Grubb said.
Oh, frick.
Yeah. So, and again, this should be a sequel to Breath of the Wild situation because it's not even really announced. I'm just...
Yeah.
The thing is that Jeff Grubb has been very on point when it comes to the leaks for EA stuff. He nailed that Mass Effect Legendary Edition thing to the T. So, I want to like believe, and also it seems right on time. It's been 3 years since the original Jedi Fallen Order.
Doesn't feel like it.
Doesn't feel like but it's been it was like pre-pandemic, Paul. That was like my favorite game of 2019, and
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and again, like Jedi Fallen Order is like what God of War and Spider-Man were in 2018. It feel like it was mixed when it came out when this game came out in 2019. It felt like as someone that really loved the property took good care of the property and gave me God of War gameplay, which was my favorite game to play in 2018. Obviously, that game, now that we've stepped away from it, I see how much it lacked on design and polish, especially in its combat.
So much polish lacking.
Yeah, but I feel like it nailed it so well. Especially like I mentioned with Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, that there is no property in entertainment I love as much as Star Wars. That means so much to me. Like in my upbringing, in my love for sci-fi, that any attempt at doing good Star Wars is always going to be a big plus in my book. And I'm really curious when the Knights of the Old Republic remake is supposed to come out, because I had heard rumors is this year, but I believe Jedi Fallen Order is more likely because Respawn is also a very hustling company that can get a game out in 2 or 3 years. So I believe it can come out, and there's been many rumors that game has been in the works for a while. And definitely this is a pie in the sky for me. Like, I'm going on faith, but I would love nothing more than to play another Jedi Fallen Order this year. And again, going back to the Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2 analogy, one that learns from the mistakes from the first game and realizes that potential. So yeah, going on faith with that number 5. Hit me with your number 5.
We're spoken.
Okay.
And we already spoke on that one, and
we forspoke about it.
We forspoke about it. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just pleasantly curious about it. It's Square Enix. I loved everything that I've seen so far, even just like we talked about Jedi Fallen Order. If the polish isn't there, as long as the core is there and it's fun and it's interesting, I'm kind of open to whatever. So yeah, that's me for 5. What about you?
All right. This one shocked me, but I will explain why. Number 4 is God of War Ragnarok.
Okay.
So, the original God of War is behind Super Mario World as my favorite game of all time.
Yes.
God of War 2018 is what rescued me into still being a gamer beyond when it came out in 2018. At a time where I was being more disenchanted at the kind of games we were getting, nothing was hitting the spot for me. It was feeling like, am I outgrowing games? Because the things I love about video games are being like smothered right now by perpetual open world games that are not hitting it for me. It's the live service games that are failing. At that time, Destiny 2 was failing. That was the time that you dropped it, because that was the pre-Forsaken era where everything was just kind of like crumbling. Loot boxes were dominating the conversation. It was like, yeah, I don't know what's happening with gaming right now. Am I outgrowing this? And then God of War 2018 hit, and it hit me like a ton of bricks with like the kind of perfect video game I like. Like, I just can't describe just how much that game resonated with me, that I feel I hold that original game in high regard, that I fear the sequel may not be able to reach what that game is in my head. And because based on what we've looked, I enjoyed what we've seen in the state of play, not in the PlayStation event we saw in 2020, one that finally showed us a huge amount of the gameplay, it looked like more God of War. I'm like, it looked more about this game that I absolutely loved. Sequels to games I absolutely love that are very similar tend to always run into the danger of not living up to what that original meant for me. And the fact that God of War Ragnarok still to this day is still a tentative 2022 release game, doesn't have like a solid release release window. Obviously that was supposed to come out last year, ironically. You remember that despite a lot of people are like, the fact that you just put a year without showing gameplay in 2020 was clear as day a sign that it was not gonna happen. I still believe it could happen in 2022 because for Sony's going big early on. I mean, Horizon is in February. Oh yeah. And then Gran Turismo is a week after. Then for them, what's next? So they had that huge time, so I can easily see it slot there. I can't imagine them being willing to be like, okay, we released this too, we're out for the next of the year, see you until 2023. I don't think so, especially after what Microsoft did to them in 2021, showing no, we're fighting, bitches. We're now in fighting shape. So if you think you can kind of coast by with your third parties, you got something else coming for us. So those are the few things that's why, like, when I was writing this, I thought this was gonna be my number one, but then when I started thinking about it, it's like, what does that original game mean to me? I was like, it's like this sequel has a huge tall order, so I'm trying to like lower kind of my expectations going in a little bit so it doesn't ruin what that means. You know, something that reminds me of a little bit, just kind of moving into a different medium. I remember when I watched Captain America: The Winter Soldier in 2014 and how gobsmacked I was, how much I loved that movie. Yeah. And because I was not expecting to love it like much. At that point, the MCU had already kind of started as like ebbing a little bit. I mean, Iron Man 3 was fun, I enjoyed it, but then Thor: The Dark World, I was like, yeah, there's something about this MCU that I don't know where this is going. And then Captain America: Winter Soldier, I was like, yeah, that first Captain America movie, yeah, I enjoyed it. Let's see the second one. Then I remember walking out of the theater, I was like, god damn. And I just kept saying Winter Soldier, Winter Soldier. Then by the time Civil War came out and it wasn't as good, I was like, man, it was like, I freaking love Winter Soldier, and Civil War is not didn't quite give me the warm and fuzzies. And then I was disappointed with that movie until I rewatched it in context again like a year after. I was like, you know what, this was actually pretty damn good. It's just that when you have one entry that you just elevating your mind for so like to such a pedestal, especially because it transcended what it meant for me just as a game. It's why I'm still gaming right now, because I saw, man, gaming can still be as good as I want it to be. That's why God of War Ragnarok is my number 4.
So it's also in my list, won't say where. My additions to all of that is that I don't know if I ever told you this, but I got God of War, the most recent one, on a whim. And I played the original trilogy. I played Ascension, that's what it's called. And it's weird multiplayer. And I don't think I played the PSP ones, but I knew the story. I understood it. I was like, man, I don't really know as much about Norse mythology. Wasn't really about that whole life. He's got a son now. Is it gonna get really weird again with like the button mashing sex scenes? And I wasn't really
with the kid
like,
watching.
I was like, oh god, I really hope they don't get really weird with this.
That's what made 2018 so impressive, because it rejected so much of what defined God of War in the Greek mythology era.
The character himself rejects exactly that concept of what it was. And when I started playing it, and I was like, okay, I'm getting a better feel for this. Like, they're going with like the Last of Us kind of style, over the shoulder,
somber,
heavier,
like heavier in story.
And like he's just a weighty dude now instead of like just
jumping around.
But then like obviously by the time you get to the chains, then it's like it hits even more harder. But like,
that's bar none my favorite story moment in a video game ever.
So good. I watched compilations of people reacting to that moment on like streams and stuff, and like the tears, they perfectly recreated the movement of the swords in a different perspective. And
what it means about a story about your forgiveness and shedding off your bad past. You're not shackled by it. And then it's like that, just like that story is so thematically rich about like forgiveness and redemption and how you're passing that to your next generation. It's like more than you would expect from the God of War series that was all about like tearing dudes in half, like having the entrails open, banging chicks left and right, like using the head of a god as a lamp in God of War 3. So it's like
there was so much going on in those games.
Yeah.
But one of the, I think the first moment I really fell in love with it was the first Baldur fight, where you were just like, all right,
from
whatever.
the very beginning, that he's just chilling, and then like it's like a superhero fight. It's a superhero fight.
And like I think you punch him, and then he punches you back, and you go flying through the house.
That's an hour into the game. That's literally an hour into the game.
I know, it's so crazy though, because it's such a slow start, and then you feel this. Okay, Kratos is fine, just like we said with the Batman situation, but it's with the Bat family that you're like, but the child is in danger. That's where we're gonna go off now. So anyway, just everything with that was just fantastic, and I love that they're continuing with it. I was expecting it was going to be a trilogy, so when they were like, okay, no, this is it, then I'm like, I wasn't mentally prepared for this to be the end of that whole saga.
Same.
So now,
but then
it
means they're leaving all in the field. So
right, so they're just going for it with this. And I don't know where they're going to go with it. So just from a story perspective, I'm like in the gameplay. I love everything that they did. I don't know how they're even going to match the moments like the Chains of Olympus. You're not going to be able to do that unless the only thing I think is the Blade of Olympus. If they brought that in as you being able to play using the sword, I think that's the only weapon related moment they could really
because the Blade of Olympus is what you thought killed Kratos in God of War 3, because they
still never really established how he survived that.
Supposedly there's a comic, I haven't read it, but apparently they try to do a comic to kind of bridge the gap between the end of God of War 3 and the start of this one. But yeah, it's just like that was such a personal game for Cory Barlog, the director, because he was the director. He was a designer in the original, then got put as director in God of War 2 when David Jaffe left, and then he unexpectedly moved on from the series before God of War 3 got into full production, and then he just went on a sabbatical. He worked on different stuff, or kind of like on a walkabout. He worked a little bit in the original Tomb Raider reboot. He was assistant director to George Miller on Mad Max Fury Road. That's why that's why Cory Barlog got so obsessed with the one-shot take, because that movie has the famous one-shot persecution. So it was like, what if we could do something like this in a video game where the camera never cuts, because it's just always it's like one shot. And designers hated him for it, because it's like, this is the technical nightmare trying to keep a game going like without ever cutting until the very end, and they made it work. And Cory Barlog is not directing Ragnarok. Eric Williams is doing, because Cory Barlog is now doing another project within Sony Santa Monica. So I think that's actually something very interesting, that they're finishing this God of War right now, because now we might see something new from Sony Santa Monica. And that's probably exciting, because it's leading the guy that gave us the 2018 game, the most beloved of all of them. Now it's spearheading what's new after they had a false start. Go back to the documentary for the 2018 game. They had a game that they canceled that was it was going to be a sci-fi game, and that was so painful for them. And God of War saved them. Maybe this is them attempting it again with someone that has a better grasp on how to get a game out the door. So but yeah, I have high hopes. Like I said, I have high hopes. This original game just means so much to me, so
that's fair.
I don't want to just put everything into this one, because it's rare for anyone to live up to. I mean, for every Dark Knight, you get a Dark Knight Rises. For every Winter Soldier, you get a Civil Wars. It's like that's something is very hard to like live up to, something that shocks you. So
that's a good point, and I'm not doing it at all, and I probably should.
Yes, but again, it's like number 4 is still, if this game hits for this year, the world's gonna stop. This, like, it's just like Zelda. The world stops when this one comes out. I can't wait. Hit me with your number 4.
Starfield.
Interesting. Yes, I have it in my list also.
Yep. Because even though we have almost nothing on it, I adore a good sci-fi exploration game. And I know like exploration is very big in air quotes, because you could say Mass Effect is a space exploration game, even if you're not really exploring anything. It's just really a story set in the sci-fi world. But it's like the idea that you're experiencing something completely new that I just love. And I mean, as you've known, I love me some Elite Dangerous. I love the ability the idea, even from Knights of the Old Republic, where you had a ship, you had a crew, and you could pick a planet and go, I want to go here. And then you had things to experience and find. Even if it was curated, it didn't really matter. And that's just what I really hope comes out of Starfield, whatever it ends up being, because there's a surprisingly few amount of those games out. Like that sci-fi style I can list on like one hand. I searched it up one day. I was like, what are games like this style? And all of the articles that wrote it had like 2 good options, and then it was like all really big stretch options. And so I really hope Starfield ends up being what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I feel Starfield is a high caliber game to experience for this year. Simply put, because this is the team that gave you Skyrim.
Yes.
This is the team that gave you whatchamacallit, this is the team that gave you Fallout. And even though the recent Fallouts haven't been all that, just the idea of having a sci-fi game with that kind of RPG that is so highly replayable by so many people that people people really take to those. And I get it. And just the idea of finally seeing a game that gives you that kind of RPG now in an open space, in what is space, that is highly tantalizing. And that's the reason why that is in my also in high up here in my list. And huge get for Xbox that they were able to secure micro. And like,
gosh,
this is an exclusive with Gravitas. This is like a big game for them. You're like, they have the next game from the guys that gave us Skyrim, the game that has been the game that has been re-released ad nauseum because people keep buying it, because that game is just has such a footprint in everyone's mind, that game, the way its RPG nature is so highly replayable. And I say that as someone that's never beaten it, but I understand. I know why that is beloved, and I know why Starfield is a big deal, and that is why it was my number 3. Hit me with your 3.
It was Elden Ring.
All right.
That was so we already talked about all that. It's just after that demo, especially seeing it really get played out as in like an open world, you can kind of play the way you need to, a lot more options. I'm here for it and I'm ready for it. Number 2 for you.
We already talked about it. Destiny 2, The Witch Queen. So it was your honorable mention. Is my number 2. Again, like, when I say that my addiction for Destiny is real, I mean it. It's like, sometimes it is a miracle that I can get away from it to be able to play other games. Destiny is the reason why I have a huge backlog, because many times during the original game's release and its existence, and many times Destiny 2, I would buy a new game, play it for a little bit, and be like, yeah, I want to go back to Destiny, because there was always something for me to play. That game just feels so good to play that you just kind of want to play that. And the fact that it's literally after 5 days from now, when we're recording, we're a month away from it, that is just so highly tantalizing. Finally, it's like fresh new content for Destiny. It's like the seasonal content worked when it needed to work. I'm glad we're in this break period so I can play other stuff. But when Witch Queen launches, it's like, man, that week, and me building up for the raid, because I'm actually raid and complete raids. Hopefully one day you'll complete. It's like,
one day, maybe. Just anything, please. I'll take whatever.
Yeah, you'll run it with an actually competent team, because I get lucky running it with competent teams where we can knock those raids in 1 hour or hour and a half, instead of the constant trial and error of never nailing it with other people. So, but yeah, Witch Queen, can't wait. I mentioned it during the live stream we watched. It's like the idea of the Witch Queen probably being another Taken King moment for them. Taken
King. I remember how crazy that was.
And that completely changed that game.
It's
Obviously,
what brought me back to Destiny 1.
Yeah, Destiny 2 already had its take and K moment with Forsaken, like the expansion that completely changed that game's fortunes.
Yeah.
But we're basically right now in what should have been Destiny 3 territory, with them upgrading the engine and the new stuff, and then having to take out a bunch of stuff from Destiny 2, which is always gonna be like a sour taste for many people. We're like, yeah, we paid for this content, you're removing it, and everyone's hoping that Bungie fixes their technical problems so they can bring everything that they took out bad, because it just feels bad that they're taking out paid content as an MMO when other MMOs don't do that.
Right.
So, but even then, it's like, good Destiny is damn good, so I can't wait. We're almost there. Paul, what's your number 2?
God of War Ragnarok.
There you go.
Yep.
It's gonna be a fantastic game. Like, I feel that's the thing. If it's more of 2018, it's gonna be like, if it's just more 2018, that's already one of the best games of all time.
And we're gonna get the payoff for whatever got set up in this, and see the fight between Kratos and Thor. And one of my favorite things about all of the God of Wars is, I know whoever this arrogant son of a gun is yelling at Kratos right now is about to get killed in some horrific way. It's about how is it going to happen, and what crazy nonsense is going to go down for it to go the way that I know it will be. So, like, of course, we had like those little nibbles in 2018's God of War with Ragni and Rudra.
Brock and Sindri.
No, the guys you kill, Thor's sons.
Oh, it's Thor, the 2 Thor sons, the boss battle.
Yeah, those guys, like the killing of them, Baldur himself, and anybody else, the 3 Technicolor ogres you kill several times in that game.
I mean, Odin's part of this game now. Like, Thor is part of this game. They have to bring the rest of the Norse pantheon.
He's gonna eventually go after all those dudes, and I didn't realize it until probably Valhalla that there is a huge pantheon of Norse characters that you can kill. I was like, if we're doing this in one game, how many dudes are we going to kill?
And like 2018 has managed to feel so complete by barely scratching.
I know.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even see Thor until the after credits scene.
That you don't even know it's there. It's one of the greatest reveals that the game just casually tells you, hey, we should go home now, but doesn't even mark you in the map.
Yeah.
Go home.
I think I did, so I found the after credit scene pretty quick, and I was so glad I did, because I was like, that's not where it's gonna end, is it?
Yeah.
And then sure enough, I was like, let's go.
I'll tell you, it's like, I've been itching to replay that game, because I did that Gimme God of War playthrough during the pandemic in 2020. That was before the PS5, and I kind of want to go through it again with the PS5 enhancements. But I kind of want to do it once we know when this game's coming out. Again, like, we don't have a release date. If we had a release date, like, actually, this is when it's coming up, it would go even higher for my most anticipated. Just try to, like, keep it lower. My number 1's going to maybe not shock you, but you probably know what it is. See if you've kept count.
I haven't.
Horizon Forbidden West.
Oh, yeah. That's right. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, well, like, it was your number 6, and that's my number 1. And that one, it makes it that way because it's so close. I've seen like the ways that I keep mentioning again, the potential of it being the fulfillment of the potential of the original game, and it's literally after tomorrow. We're a month away from it. It's like, we know it's here now. No last minute delay. It's like a big game we're so close to finally experiencing. And me, that I haven't been playing open world games right now, I feel that could be a good one to kind of like re-dive into that genre that I was able to kind of mostly stay away from in 2021. And I feel like everything they've said, all the right things, it looks right, and I just can't wait to experience like the fulfillment of a studio finally understanding how open worlds work, and seeing the improvements the genre made almost immediately after they released their game, and trying to implement that back in. So, and Bo ladies, forever simp. So your number
archery
1, Paul.
girls, you've been eating good with the archery girls lately, with all the media surrounding Kate Bishop and Aloy and the pathless chick and everything else going on.
The female Green Arrow and the Arrowverse also said.
I know, right? My final one was Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah.
Or the sequel to Breath of the Wild.
You're going on massive faith that is coming out this year. So
I had to think when I was really breaking it down. I thought, okay, assuming, I mean, I always say the anticipated part of that anticipated games is so loose that I can kind of make the justification anywhere. So I say, well, if it comes out in 2022, that would absolutely be what I'd look forward to the most.
Absolutely, same.
And like, even if I understand that it might not be as like capturing that same gorgeous level of just getting lost in Breath of the Wild 1, the walking the hills and valleys as you just kind of, hey, what's that over there? Hey, what's that over there?
It's just so perfect. That's that kind of game.
Really feeling that perfect balance. If I can just do that in Breath of the Wild 2, I am going to be pretty much fully satisfied. And another thing that got me hyped up again, oddly enough, was finding out that the Hyrule Warriors games...
It's canon.
No, they're not.
What, really?
I found out they're not. Somebody told me. That was
the whole deal about Age of Calamity, that's canon.
That's what somebody told me that is not like actually fully canon. And so we don't have to rely on the weird time manipulation shenanigans messing up all of the craziness that got set up in Breath of the Wild 1. So I was like, oh, that kind of sounds interesting, because that's what I was sad about.
That makes me sad, because I love the idea of Age of Calamity being like essential for that. For that, because it provided more story than Breath of the Wild even did. So
I don't know. I just want hang on. Is Age of Calamity canon? I wanna okay, so upon Googling it, at least the ZeldaFandom.com says that it's considered non-canon per the canon guidelines because the order of events irreconcilably occur in a different order from what Nintendo has previously established as canon. So because things are out of order in Age of Calamity, it cannot be officially canon.
Makes sense.
Is what they say. So it's like, what I take it as is, this is what could happen, but we're not going to deal with whatever that is. It's
parallel universe. So yeah, it's
that's
parallel universe storytelling. Yeah,
that's what I'm starting to appreciate, especially now that people are understanding that in like the comic book movie section. It's like, we can just say this is a different telling of things, and people are just going to be okay with it. I love that, because people got way too into that with Star Wars that it almost ruined the series for me personally.
Oh yeah, no, like that's hurt the movies. Like
it's messed it up.
But like the reliance on the side content.
And I think eventually that's what's going to happen. They're going to go through a whole wave of time making new media, and then eventually they'll just say, hey, that was a different like timeline. We're going to do something new now. Yeah. But anyway, back to what our actual subject is. The sequel to Breath of the Wild is easily one of like the recapturing moments of my love for gaming. My love for Zelda, my love for Nintendo stuff.
You had in 2017 what I had with God of War in 2018, basically.
Yes,
so
that's basically it. And like, even though I was playing just about as many games, I was really disillusioned by it. I was like playing the same games. I was just like, all right, time to play this again. And I wasn't really enjoying myself. But that was like, this is what games can be.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's because of the hindsight and ranking it with the series that is why like its stature, the original, fell off a little bit. But 2017 experiencing that game was magic. Like I tell you, it's like that. It was hard to go back to. I was so thankful I finished and platinumed Horizon Zero Dawn before jumping into this, because I was like, thank God I did that, because boy, oh boy, this would have been really hard to go back, because I feel this revolutionizes how you interact within an open world in such a way that there's a reason why now people are taking cues from this one. And just an inside baseball about like my thought process with this with my list. If God of War Ragnarok had a release date, if the sequel to Breath of the Wild had a name and a release date, my list would have gone from God of War from 4 to number 1.
Yeah.
Zelda would have gone from honorable mention all the way to number 2. And Horizon Forbidden West goes 3, 4, and then everything just falls back, and then goodbye, Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga from the list. Yeah. And I was just thinking, I was like, there's a potential for in 2022, I get a sequel for my 2017 Game of the Year, my 2018 Game of the Year, and my 2019 Game of the Year. Think about
I didn't even think of that,
yeah,
but you're
like,
absolutely right.
And if those games are as equally good as their progenitors, if not better, 2022 high potential for be a banger of a year if all of this hits.
Oh yeah.
Again,
this is going to be untouched if all of these games actually come out. And like I said, if just a third of them come out, a third of them are good, I am just
and that's why I played it safe with Horizon and Destiny being my number 1 and number 2, because there's no way in heaven those things slip from February now. No way in heaven. So that's why I know, it's like I'm having them now. So
I've seen one game slip from its month away release date after it's gone gold, and that didn't go well for that game. So, I don't think we're gonna see that again.
Yeah, people know already that.
Yeah.
That is like, that rarely happens, and in that case it was a special kind of messy. So and with that, Paul, our lengthy, very meaty, most anticipated games of 2022, it's now over. And that's it for the show. So starting next week, we're finally back into our normal shenanigans. So we're gonna be talking about the news, maybe some of the games that we've been playing, and if time allows it, one of your random topics. And for people that see when this episode goes live, and if they stayed all the way here, just as a reminder that now for this year, or at least for the foreseeable future, we're back into just recording once. We started breaking up the topics and the news a little bit, like sometime around our 20th episode, and now right now, because of time commitments and all that, we're back to just recording all at once, and we're gonna be recording on Tuesdays to post on Wednesdays, both on video and on audio services. And then randomly, if we decided to start streaming again, we'll try to find time, but at least for now, that's what we're gonna try to hit as this second season of the X Bottom kind of goes live.
Alejandro, you know that you just laid out our plans, so we cannot legally do what we just laid out. Yeah. Because every time we say a plan, it goes horribly wrong. So you have just jinxed us horribly.
Cursed us, yeah. But no, like, I do believe we're gonna hit it. We're gonna be able to record on Tuesdays and then just post on Wednesdays. Yep. Give more time for a little post-pro.
The idea originally for splitting them was that we would have 2 shorter recording sessions, and each one became about the same length as
if not longer.
If not longer. So we're gonna have to tie ourselves up with those.
Yes. but yeah, until your schedule changes or anything changes, right now that's gonna be the schedule now. So recordings on Tuesdays whenever time allows in the afternoons, and because I'm no longer sharing a computer, now I have more time to edit during that, because before I needed to like record and try to edit and push that thing out super quick because I needed to give this computer to my brother, but he built his own PC, a meaty PC. I tell you, a game running at 240 frames a second with a monitor that runs at 240 frames, insanity. Never do that, because then it ruins lower frame rates for you. So, but yeah, glad I got that computer now. But yeah, and with that, I can't wait for us to restart and see what nastiness the news section gives us. But like, we've mostly dodged NFT nightmare, the death of E3 and other stuff. So
I don't think I could talk about NFTs again for like another year.
Yes, but it's been a nightmare how much NFT talk has been in this first 17 days of this year. But yeah, we're gonna be talking about the news that happens from here on out. Anything that happens before, you have all your other sites so you can read those. And Paul, where can people find you?
As always, y'all, you can find me at Twitter at Dork of Art, where all of my tweets are bangers. YouTube for a completely dormant channel, also at Dork of Art, and on Twitch a semi-dormant channel of Angel Sword 21. Yes,
you can find me at twitch.tv/TheSlayerGiant, a channel that was mostly dormant before a Halo playthrough, and right now it's back to being dormant again until we find our next big co-op experience to stream. You can find me at Twitter at @A_DrosseGo. Yeah, I don't tweet as much, but I like retweeting a bunch of stuff and sometimes promote some stuff. Instagram, I like posting my stories. I'm thankful that in my Instagram, Alejandro Segovia 93, now in my stories I can post links because more people watch your links than your posts. So hopefully you can grow the channel that way. And you can find some of my written content at thecriticalcorner.com, which I started posting again. I did in written form my top 10 and the honorable mentions that I mentioned in our recording last year. And I'm going to also be writing my most anticipated games that I just mentioned here also there. So I'm going to try to see if there's ways that I'm going to be writing companion pieces to what we record and have like both and kind of overlap each other.
Nice.
So, but always from the things that I talk about, not yours.
Right.
So, yeah, that way I can keep writing more. And until next time, Paul, it's been a pleasure. And remember, people,
Press X
to play.
Good night, everyone.
Hasta luego.